Okay, so hey there guys. So today's video is going to be ranking all of my eyeshadow palettes that I've gotten in 2020 so far. I've gotten about 8 eyeshadow palettes so far this year, and I just wanted to share with you guys my thoughts on all of the palettes, kind of give you mini reviews of all of them. I saw this video on Andrea Matillano's channel. I'll link hers below. I'm not sure if she's the originator of doing this video. I'm pretty sure I've seen it before on YouTube, so if there is any credit I need to give, I will leave it in the description box. But let's get into the palettes because I'm really excited to film this video. I've been wanting to film it for a while, and let's get into it. So the first palette, I'm going to go from worst to best. So we're going to start with number 8. And number 8 for me has to be the Fenty Beauty Snap Shadows palette. Now, for me, I really wanted to try Fenty Beauty's eyeshadow formula, but I've always heard that her eyeshadow formula is kind of subpar to the rest of her products in her line because I end up loving basically everything else that she has. I love her mascara, I love her foundation, I love a concealer, I love her lip products, but for some reason, and I love her other face products like her bronzer, her blush, her highlights, but for some reason, I feel like if she took like the highlighter formula and put it into her eyeshadows, I feel like they would work a lot better. But this palette was extremely disappointing for me. I mean, one, the price is kind of high for only 6 shadows. And the fact that basically all these other palettes in this video, you get more product than you do in this palette. And regardless if it's I mean, obviously there's other palettes in this video where you get a ton more product and they're a lot bigger palettes and they're more expensive, but there's some palettes in this video where they're very decently priced and you get a lot more product. What I will say about this palette is that I do like it for everyday use. I do like it for when I don't want to really put too much effort into my makeup. I don't always need like a super pigmented shadow for day-to-day use. This is a great everyday palette, and I also, like I said, I think that this is a great travel palette, but at the same time, I've heard not very good reviews about her past eyeshadow palettes, and these were her most recent releases for eyeshadow, and I heard mixed reviews about them, but I still wanted to try her formula because it's basically the only product that I haven't really tried from her besides her brow products. But after trying all these other indie brands that I'm including in this video, this was definitely the most disappointing for me. The fact that all of these other palettes are way better than this one doesn't really make me excited to purchase eyeshadow palettes from mainstream brands anymore because I don't really purchase from Sephora. I don't really purchase eyeshadow palettes from Sephora or Ulta anymore. I don't really purchase mainstream palettes. It's mostly indie brands or online brands or ColourPop. But the last mainstream palette I purchased, I'm pretty sure, was Urban Decay's Honey palette before this one. And I know with Urban Decay, I'm going to get great quality. Even though sometimes their palettes are hit and miss, I know that their eyeshadow quality is great. I've been a fan of Urban Decay for years, but I also love Fenty, and I really wanted to give her a chance, but this palette was just lackluster for me. It's not as pigmented. The matte shadows blend well, and the shimmers are pretty. Like, it is a nice palette, but compared to the rest of these palettes, this one is on the bottom. So that's all I got to say about this guy. It is a little bit expensive for what it is. I think that these should have been like maybe under $20, maybe like $18. I feel like that would have been more of a reasonable price. $25 seems to be a little bit steep for something that is this tiny. She's kind of doing that with a lot of products right now, like with her cream blushes. A lot of people were upset about how tiny they were, and then same thing with this. I feel like that is kind of the same thing. I mean, yes, if you get 2 of these, you're spending $50. And you do get a discount if you get 2, but I feel like, you know, she's still making money that way, and it still ends up being like $45. I think you only get like a $5 off or something. So it's still, I mean, that's still 12 shadows, so that is like basically the amount of a full eyeshadow palette, but I just think that they're a little bit expensive for what they are. So I am probably not going to purchase any more Fenty Beauty eyeshadows in the future, but I really did want to try the formula. Unfortunately, it fell short for me. So now we're going to move on to number 7. And I did try a bunch of new formulas this year. Fenty and most of these palettes, I have not tried these formulas before. I really wanted to branch out and try some new formulas. So the number 7 palette is the Ace Beauté Scarlet Dusk palette. Now, I did purchase this from XO Marley's Poshmark. I will leave it linked below. She got this palette in one of her boxy charms and she decided to sell it. And this was one of the palettes on my list to try in 2020. And I just decided to bite the bullet, and I also wanted to support her, so I decided to get the palette. So I didn't think that the palette was going to be too overwhelming for me because, again, most of the palettes that I've gotten in 2020 have been easier palettes for me to try and use because there's not too many shimmers in them. And I will say the color story in here I think is gorgeous. Most of the mattes in here are beautiful. The problem that I have with this palette is that the shadows are extremely dry. But the mattes are very pigmented. They're not really powdery at all because they're dry. And I think that they blend really beautifully. I think that this orange is beautiful. I think that the majority of the mattes are gorgeous. I think that the pinks, especially this one and this one, they kind of fade while you're using them. But at the same time, I still think I can create a really pretty look. And these two shimmers are stunning, or Aurora and Maui. Of course, you guys know how much of a sucker I am for light golds or any kind of gold color, but this shade Maui is so beautiful. It's like, I'm not going to swatch anything in this video because I really just want to give you my thoughts. And I have swatched all of these eyeshadow palettes when I hauled them, but I just don't really want to swatch them because I feel like that's just going to waste time. But overall, though, I just wasn't as impressed with this palette as people are with like some of their other palettes because I've heard so many good things about Ace Beauté's eyeshadow palettes. The Fancy Face absolutely loves their Oceanic palette, and so does Pink Sweets. She loves that palette, and she also has 2 other palettes that she loves from them that she put in her top 10 palettes if she could only have 10 eyeshadow palettes. So I trust Anya's opinion that I really wanted to try eyeshadow palette from their brands, and I've always been kind of interested in them, and I just thought that this would be like the easiest palette for me to try because, you know, again, it's only 12 shades, so it wasn't that overwhelming to try. But the dud shade in here for me was definitely wait, this one's Aurora. This one's Aruba. Sorry, this one is Aurora. The gold shade is Aruba. That one I love. This shade is very hard to apply. It takes a lot to build up on the lid. I even tried applying it without a glitter glue, and I think that I had the same experience. It just, for some reason, doesn't stick to the lid because it has a very dry formula. I find similar problems with another palette on this list that I will share with you in just a minute. But overall, I was kind of expecting more from this brand, but I find that the shadows are just very dry. But the mattes blend out really beautifully, and I think that they're very pigmented. So I think that I've kind of been more impressed with mattes than shimmers this year in most palettes, and I've been kind of having a newer appreciation for matte shadows because I think that most brands have nailed their matte formulas, but the Fenty Beauty weren't as good as these. So that's the only reason why it ranked higher, honestly. And the color story is way more interesting, and I think that this is a great travel palette as well because it's such an easy palette to take anywhere and you can do a numerous amount of looks. I think that this palette's very versatile as well. So that is really it about this one. I wasn't really sure how I felt about it though. I was kind of torn, but I feel like I probably should have tried a different palette from their brand. I probably should have tried the 8 Pan palette. I don't remember what it's called. I think that's the Sunset something. I think it has a sun name or something. I also love the inspiration of this palette, that it's like themed because of sunsets, and I just think that's gorgeous. That are reminiscent of the breathtaking sunsets witnessed in various locations around the world. I think that's so cool. And is a sister palette to our Vintage Dawn. I think it's the Vintage Dawn. It's like that 8 Pan with like the red. But anyway, I wasn't too impressed with this one, but I like it. So that's that. Okay, and then number 6 would have to be, again, another new brand to me this year. This palette was actually also sent to me by Marley because I sent her a bunch of eyeshadow palettes last year, and I was like, seriously, all I want in return. She did pay me for the shipping for those. It was like $15, and then she sent me this palette for free because I was like, all I want is that palette for all the palettes that I sent you. So number 6 is the Storybook Cosmetics Fairy Tales Briar Rose palette. So this is what it looks like inside, and it comes with 12 shadows. The Ace Beauté comes with 12, and the Fenty Beauty comes with 6. So this also comes with 12. So there's 3 shadows in each row. So a couple of things about this palette. I really love the shimmers in here. The shimmers are stunning. I think that the blues are a little bit lackluster. They're not as metallic and shimmery as the more like metallic looking shades like Fairies and Beauty and Enchanted and Talia. So stunning. I might do some swatch comparisons at the end because there are a couple of palettes that have some silvers in here, so I might swatch some of the metallics for you guys just to compare the formulas. But I really wanted this palette because, one, I've been wanting to try Storybook Cosmetics for a while. I think that the theme and the overall appeal of the books, the way that they're shaped and the fact that they're storybooks, I just think that's freaking adorable. And also because if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, I am a huge Sleeping Beauty fan. Sleeping Beauty is like my favorite Disney movie. So Briar Rose is obviously her grim fairy tale name. So I really wanted to try this palette. So I asked Marley if she had tried this yet. And she said, honestly, no, I haven't touched it. And I was like, well, is it okay? If I could have it, I would really love to use it and try it. And I've been wanting that palette. She was like, sure, I'll send it to you. She was so sweet. So the negative thing about this palette is that there really is not too much product in here. That's why I hit pan on this shade Woodland so quickly, because obviously I just recently accumulated all these palettes this year. This was the first palette that I got back in February because I was trying to be on, you know, more of a no-buy this year. But then meanwhile, I ended up accumulating 8 eyeshadow palettes this year because, hello, like, we're all stuck inside. So basically my shift has been buying makeup. So the metallics are beautiful, but the pans are very, very flat. So it doesn't really hold too much product. So I can easily hit pan on probably most of these mattes very, very quickly. Probably the next one I'm going to hit pan on is Spindle. So that's a little bit deceiving, and also I think that's a little bit overpriced because the shadows are so flat. But at the same time, like, for me, it doesn't really matter too much about how much product is in something because I rarely use up eyeshadow anyway. And for me, this was mostly a display piece, and since she sent it to me for no charge, I don't really feel too guilty if I don't get enough use out of it or if I hit pan on certain shades because it didn't cost me anything. But of course, I'm still appreciative that she sent it to me. So the metallics in here are beautiful. Prince is really pretty. Castle's really pretty. Prince, I had a little bit of trouble of getting that to be pigmented, and it kind of transferred to the crease. And then some of the mattes, the best matte in here is Grim. It's a beautiful chocolate brown on the outer corners, very pigmented. But the rest of the mattes, I find that they just blend away as I'm using them. They're very, very light, especially Spindle and Woodland. They kind of just fade. So that's my problem with the palette, but the metallics are really beautiful. So I would recommend these. I would still recommend the brand. I think that if you have been interested in them, I think it would be a great brand to try just because the aesthetic is so adorable and pleasing, and I love the concept. So that is it about that palette. So now let's move on to yet again another new brand to me this year, and this one comes in at number 5, and I'm talking about the Kaleidos Futurism 2 Cyber Bronze palette. Now, I actually freaking love this palette, and it's still in my top 5. The only reason why I'm ranking this palette lower is because there's not really too much I can do with this palette since there's only 6 shades in here. Other than that, the formula of Kaleidos shades and eyeshadows are beautiful. All of these shadows are stunning. The mattes are super pigmented and the metallics are beautiful. I just think I can't really do much with this palette. I kind of wish that they had put maybe a matte red in here, like a dark matte red, rather than like this shade, because then I could do more with the red shade. Like, and then the same with the silver. Like, I feel like they could have put like a gold in here instead, and I feel like I would have probably gotten more use out of it. I mean, I have used this palette quite a bit since I've gotten it, and the metallics are beautiful. They're very wet, and they apply beautifully on the lid. And then the mattes are super buttery and soft and pigmented and blend so beautifully. But the only thing is that I feel like, for me, I can't really get too many versatile looks out of this unless I pull other mattes out. I probably should have gotten maybe the new palette, but at the same time, I didn't want to overwhelm myself too much this year with new eyeshadows, so I thought that this was a perfect way for me to try out their shadows, because there's only 6 shadows in here. But I love this palette. I think the metallics are beautiful and the mattes. So if you guys have been wanting to try Kaleidos, I highly recommend them. Their formula is kick-ass. This is a great formula and honestly really impressed me. But I've always heard really good things about their formula, and the packaging is so sick. I love this futuristic packaging. It looks like the planet Jupiter. I can't get enough of it. It's so pretty. But if you guys have been interested in Kaleidos, they make great products. I love the eyeshadows, and I love the highlighter that I tried, which was Solar Sailor. That is stunning as well. So the only reason why this is ranking lower is not because of the formula, but just because I feel like I mean, probably the Storybook and the Ace Beauté I can get more looks out of than this one, but the formula is definitely way better in this one than in the Storybook and the other two that I mentioned. So that is number 5. And then number 4 is the Stupid Love House Laboratories Stupid Love eyeshadow palette. Sorry, I don't know why I was saying that backwards. So I know that there's been a lot of mixed reviews about this palette. A lot of people feel different ways about Lady Gaga's line of makeup. I did just do a full review of this palette on my channel, so you guys can go check that out. That was literally the video that I posted right before this one. People were kind of disappointed in the direction that her, this is what it looks like. They were kind of disappointed in the direction that her brand was taking, because honestly, the first couple of releases that she released, I really wasn't interested in at all. And I'm a massive Gaga fan. Gaga's like my favorite artist ever. I don't know if you guys know that, but I freaking love her so much. I've met her a couple of times, and I love her so much. She's my favorite artist. And a lot of people were very excited about her makeup line. We thought it was going to be extravagant and loud and avant-garde like she is. And then she kind of just came out with some really generic commercial stuff. And then I kind of feel like her album is the same way. But let's not get into all of that. Let's just talk about the palette. So for this palette, I ranked it higher than the other ones, not because of the formula, because I honestly think the formula is better in the Kaleidos palette. But I ranked this one higher because of the versatility. I feel like I can do a ton of looks with this palette, and that's why I really wanted to rank it higher. The top 3 are probably not as versatile as this one, because I feel like this is the most versatile palette in this list. But I ranked it lower because of the formula. The formula is not as good as the top 3. Also, there are some dud shades in here, which are Replay and 1000 Doves. Definitely the most disappointing shades. 1000 Doves, I cannot get to pick up on my inner corners. I had to use like 3 different shades today on my inner corners, because this is the palette I'm wearing today. Obviously, I've been wearing this palette since I got it, because this is my most recent palette to my collection. I got it like a week and a half ago, and I've been wearing it every day since then, because I've been wanting to try the shades again. I've tried every shade in this palette. I really wanted to do this video before I got this palette, but I was like, you know what? Since I was able to try out all the shades, now I can give you guys my thoughts on this one. And I think 8 palettes is decent enough. Since we're halfway through the year, I might as well share with you guys how many palettes that I've gotten. And then at the end of the year, if I decide to get more palettes, which there are like 3 on my list that I still want to get, I will do a roundup and probably rank my palettes again. But I really wanted to just share my thoughts on all my palettes this year so far. The mattes in here are great. No problems with the mattes. They're all stunning. Just some of the shimmers are kind of lackluster. This one is extremely hard to pick up. Same thing with Light Up, but I find that this one is better on the lid than on the inner corners, but it is very hard pan again and hard to pick up with a brush. I suggest with these shadows that you pick them up with your fingers because that's really the only way you're going to get them to apply. If you use a brush on your lids, they're really not going to pick up that well. But the rest of the shimmers are stunning. So yeah, that's basically all I have to say about the palette. If you guys were interested in trying the brand, I think that this would be the best addition to your collection so far. I think that this is the most interesting thing that she's come out with. And I think I'm going to have to start collecting her eyeshadow palette since I also have the first one as well. But if you want to see my full thoughts on this palette, I will link the review video below, or you can just go check it out. So yeah, that's it about this guy. Okay. And then number 3. Can you guess my top 3? So number 3 is, of course, the ColourPop Going Coconuts Pressed Powder Palette. Now, if the formula would have been better in the Stupid Love palette, it probably would have been way closer to, it probably would have been number 3. Because the top 2, honestly, are really hard to beat, honestly. But this one definitely has a way better formula than the House Laboratories palette. Even though the House Laboratories palette is more versatile, this one has become my favorite everyday eyeshadow palette. I love this palette. I love this palette way more than the Fenty Beauty palette. I really want to do a comparison on both of those. But at the same time, I think that you guys realize that I love this palette way more than the Fenty Beauty. I think that this is a great everyday palette because I feel like this is the only palette I would need to grab. And I don't need to grab any other palettes because you got a brow bone highlight in here. You got quite a few crease shades in here that you can use for the crease, for the lower lash line, for the defining shade, for the outer corners, to smoke out. You can smoke out the lower lash line. There's so much you can do with this palette. Even though for me, I don't do all that extravagant stuff. You can also put this one all over the lid. You can use this on the outer corners. You can use this on the outer corners. You can do a cooler tone look with this shade and these shades, and the metallics in here are ridiculously breathtaking. I think that these are some of the best metallics that they have. I also know that they came out with a new metallic formula a couple months back. And I think that this is the only palette that I have with the new metallic formula in it. And it's gorgeous. But I love this palette. I feel like that if I'm in a rush or if I need to just grab something, this is such a good palette to use. This was such a good palette to use when I needed to go to the city with my mom because it was so easy to just apply and not think about. So I love this. I mean, it's really hard for me to not rank ColourPop palettes high, but for this one, this is the only ColourPop palette I've tried in 2020. I really have been trying to expand my horizons when it comes to trying out different brands, so that's why this is the only one I've purchased this year, because last year I purchased about, I think, like 7 ColourPop palettes, so I wanted to branch out and try some new brands, but this is definitely the best 9-pan palette that I've tried from them besides the 2 Frozen ones. I'm definitely the most impressed with this one. And it's just a great everyday eyeshadow palette. Honestly, if you need something for every day and you want it to be great quality, I would highly suggest this palette. It's freaking bomb. Okay, now for my top 2. So can you guess? I'll give you a minute. Well, not a minute. That's too long. I'll give you a little bit. Okay, so number 2 is, again, another new brand to me. Both of these brands are brand new to me. Number 2 is the Melt Cosmetics Rust Palette. You guys, Melt blew me away with their formula. I was waiting to see whether or not I wanted to purchase the Muerte palette. I thought it looked like such a stunning palette. Everybody talked about how good it was. And then I saw this on Trend Mood's Instagram, and I've always been wanting to try the Rust Stacks, but I always thought that they were too overpriced. Melt is an expensive brand. They are not cheap. Gimme Glow way cheaper, but this palette was almost $60, but I paid for it using the payment installments, so it wasn't as, you know, crazy to order it then. I think I ordered this a couple days before that they actually shut down, and it came super quick. It came in like 3 days. It was really fast shipping. But oh my god, this palette is so good, you guys. Their mattes are so damn pigmented and beautiful and blend out so well. I love every single shade in this palette. I love every single shade in this palette. And I love every single shade in the top palette. Like, I think that across the board, all three of these palettes are very consistent in the formula. There's not one dud shade in any of them. They're all amazing. But the pigment in the Melt palettes are amazing. I'm glad that they fixed the problem with the pans coming out and the pans crumbling. So yeah, I freaking love this. I have used this a ton since I've gotten it. And I'm so glad that they released. I was really torn as to which palette I really wanted to try from them, and I felt like this was the perfect opportunity to try a palette from them. And it had most of the shades that were in the original Rust stack, and then they added some beautiful shimmers, and all three of these shimmers are amazing. And I think that it wasn't that overwhelming to try because there was only 3 shimmers in here. So yeah, I love this palette so much, and I'm so glad that I picked this up, and I was so glad that I finally was able to try Melt. And I thought that this was the perfect opportunity to try their brand, and I was blown away by the quality. Really, really, really amazing palette. So that is that one. And also I felt that I would get way more use out of this one than the Muerte palette. Because, hello, there's way more everyday friendly shades in here, but you can also smoke it out and create a really beautiful smoky eye, a really beautiful rust eye, and that's why it's called the Rust palette. But I thought that this was a palette I was going to use way more than the Muerte palette. It's gorgeous, but for me, I don't use colorful shades too often. That's why I got the Stupid Love palette instead, because there's neutrals and colorful shades in here. Same thing with the Storybook palette. Okay, so number 1, I think people can guess what my number 1 palette is, but of course it has to be Gimme Glow, and this is the Gimme Glow Vintage Rose eyeshadow palette. You guys, I have never been more blown away by an eyeshadow palette after the first use that I knew every single that every single shade that I was going to try in here was going to be freaking amazing. Their pigmentation is literally off the charts, and the color story in here is freaking stunning. But look at these shimmers and look at these mattes. I have never seen a palette swatch so beautifully and perform on the eyes as good as this one. The only plus about the Stupid Love palette over these is that they don't transfer as much because they have a much drier formula. These are much more of a wet formula. But they are so damn pigmented and they are so stunning on the eyes. I am really interested in trying another palette from them, but I will save that for my next palettes I'm still interested in video because I want to film another one of those. I'm just waiting for my new computer because I can't use the images on my phone while I'm recording on my phone, obviously. So I have to wait for my new computer, and I really don't want to film on the Windows computer. I think the quality is better on my phone. But anyway, this palette is amazing. This palette has sold out a couple of times on Gimme Glow. I got this back in February. This was the first palette that I got besides the Storybook Cosmetics. I got this one, I think, at the tail end of February when they still had it. And then I think it sold out again for a little while. And then it came back like mid-March. And I think it has sold out every time they've restocked it. This has been their most popular palette for a while because it's a really amazing spring palette. But you guys, I'm going to swatch these because I have to. I'll swatch a couple of the shimmers and then I'll swatch a matte. But that's like barely touching. And they are so freaking stunning. They are so metallic. Like, that's ridiculous. Look how pigmented that pink is. You probably thought it was going to be like this light ass pink. It's not. It's freaking stunning. I have been telling everyone that if they want like me to recommend a palette, like all of my new Instagram friends, because of the Color Series collaborations, I've been telling everyone, if you want a good palette and you want to try a good brand, I keep on telling Debbie to try Gimme Glow. I was like, try Gimme Glow. I was like, if you love JD Glow, you're going to love Gimme Glow. I've never tried JD Glow. I might at some point, but since I've tried Gimme Glow, they're kind of similar in the kick-ass pigmentation. It's just ridiculous. And this Velvet Petals, that matte, look at that. Look how good that is. It's so pigmented. Like, what? So, obviously, I had to rank it at number 1. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the countdown. I freaking love this palette. It's amazing, and I highly recommend anyone to try Give Me Glow. You will not be disappointed. They are absolutely stunning. But I just want to swatch a couple of the similar shades real quick. I'm going to swatch the 3 silvers in these palettes. So I'll start with the Storybook palette with the shade Fairies, just to do a couple of comparisons for you guys. So that one is Fairies. Again, their metallics are really, really pretty. That one is Fairies. Really, really beautiful shimmer. But the Kaleidos one is definitely my favorite because it's a really, really good metallic silver. It kind of reminds me of the, look at that. It kind of reminds me of the Electric palette from Urban Decay. See how the Kaleidos one is more metallic? And then the other one is the Stupid Love palette, which is not a bad shimmer either. It's a little bit more crumbly than the other two though, but it's a good it's a good silver. Nikki Tutorials was like the first one to see. It does swatch pretty crumbly, but it is a good silver. And that one's right there. So this one is Fairies from the Storybook palette. This one is the silver from the Kaleidos palette. I can't remember the name right now. And then Free Woman from the Gaga palette. And they're all pretty good shimmers. I would say probably all of them transfer because they all have that like metallic formula and some of them are crumbly. But I just wanted to compare a couple of shades for you guys. And then I am going to compare just a couple of the matte browns for you guys because I want to compare them to that Give Me Glow matte brown because I want to show you guys how good the matte is in the Give Me Glow. I'm just going to wipe them all off and I'll re-swatch it for you guys. And then that'll be it because I need to get out of the house because I got to go pick up food for me and my boyfriend. Okay. So there are a couple of matte browns because there's a lot of matte browns I need to swatch actually. So let's start with the Kaleidos because that one's in front of me. And I'm going to do the shade Y2K. Really beautiful matte brown. That one's that one. Really good. Actually, was it this one I wanted? Let me just swatch all of the matte browns. Why the fuck not? Okay, so that's the 2 browns from the Kaleidos. Those are the 2 matte browns. Really good mattes. And then we'll do the melts. And I'm going to do the Mar shade, which is really good. And I'm going to do the Rust shade. Give me one sec. Gotta wipe the swatches off first. The Rust shade is a really pretty matte brown too. So this one is Kaleidos, and these are the melt shades, just for comparison. But they're all really pigmented, really smooth formulas. So that's why I love those formulas. And then we're just going to do Gaga and Give Me Glow. So let me do the Give Me Glow first, just to show you guys that swatch again. Oh my god, can I not drop everything? That's literally not even like more than one swipe in the pan. Do you see the difference? That's the Give Me Glow. Like, that's ridiculous how opaque and how matte that is. And then the Stupid Love palette. This one is the shade Stupid Love. The mattes are actually pretty decent in the Stupid Love palette, but not as good as Give Me Glow. And then I'm just going to do the Going Coconuts. There's actually a lot of browns I need to swatch. I thought that this would be the best comparison. Okay, so there's only 3 more. I think there's only 4 more shades to swatch. I already did this one too, so let's put that away. Oh my gosh. Just dropped the palette. Oh, okay, we're almost done. Bear with me, bear with me. Okay, and then the Going Coconuts from ColourPop. I just wanted to do the shade Nutty. That's also a really good brown. So that one's Nutty right there. That one is Stupid Love. I'm going to forget which one's which if I don't tell you guys. And then the Storybook, the shade Grim right here. This is a really good matte too. It's like more like a red brown, but it's a really good matte. So that one is Grim. Swatch a little bit better. So that one's right there. You see how less pigmented all of those are compared to the Gimme Glow? Like when I look at the Gimme Glow in person, it's definitely like the most opaque out of all of them. Like that's ridiculous for a matte. I've heard that the Norvina ones are like that good too, but I'm not purchasing any of those. Norvina's kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And then I'm going to do Nocturnal from the Ace Beauté, which is pretty similar to the Storybook shade. I didn't realize how similar those are. That one's the Ace Beauté Nocturnal, and that one is Storybook's Grim. Those are pretty similar. The Ace Beauté swatch is a little bit more dry. And then the last one I'm going to do is the Fenty Beauty. And then we will be done with this video, because I got to get out of here. And I'm going to do the matte brown in here. Where can I put it? I'll put it here. And that one's not bad either. So those are all those swatches. This is the Gimme Glow. These two are Kaleidos. These two are the Melt. And then this one's the Stupid Love palette. This one is, can't remember which one that is. Going Coconuts? I think that's Going Coconuts. This one is Storybook Grim. This one is Ace Beauté Nocturnal. And this one is the Fenty Beauty. So there are some swatch comparisons for you guys. And that is it. So I'm just going to wipe my hand off. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on all my social media. Let me know what your favorite palettes have been this year. Have you purchased any palettes? Have you not been spending any money on makeup? Have you just been saving money? Because I know everyone is pretty tight right now for people that are unsure that can go back to work. Or have you been, you know, a little bit shop happy and wanting to make yourself a little bit happier with playing with makeup? There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. So please let me know if you guys have been loving any certain palettes that you guys have picked up recently. I would love to know. So please like and subscribe. Follow me on all my social media. And I hope you guys enjoyed my list. And I love you guys. Bye.